Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in to Sports Talk with Broads. And yes, we do have some Flyers to discuss today as John Tortorella is now their head coach. And there's so many different things to dissect when it comes to this hire. And I will admit that the name, okay, and the background noise and the public negative perception of him, I do believe that it's overblown. Right from the rip, he's a good coach. He is a good coach in the NHL. He has the track record that he has for a reason. He has won a Stanley Cup. He has won Coach of the Year a couple times. He has been nominated for that award a bunch more. So there's a reason why he has a track record of success. It comes down to what we're going to see on the ice with a healthy Ryan Ellis or a not so healthy Ryan Ellis, a healthy Sean Couturier or a not so healthy Sean Couturier. Do they free up some cash to go get a big time free agent and a big time splash that can help what they miss in Claude Giroux now that he's no longer here and things of that nature? So that's really where it begins, is the product on the ice with some of these players just being better than what they showed us last year or healthier than what they showed us last year. Because let's be realistic, there were times where bottom six forwards were constantly playing top 6 minutes and Ivan Provorov sucked without a number one defenseman next to him. So these all played a role in the big snowball effect of one of the worst hockey seasons I could remember in this town. I'm sick to my stomach watching the Colorado Avalanche, watching the Tampa Bay Lightning, watching some of these other teams. And not that because personally, and I got into a little bit of a debate with one of my buddies who lives out in Michigan, one of my old teammates, Keith Inman, shout out to him, my netminder who I used to take punches for in the face and I'd give it back when someone gave a nice two-hand to his glove before the whistle was blown back in our junior days of our prime, if you will. But you know, it's like one of the things he mentioned to me was this hire isn't doing anything, and what they're trying to do is put Band-Aids on your franchise. And yeah, you're not wrong. This whole aggressive retool is definitely a motor, or it's something that is motivating them to make this type of move and all that. And see, where their current roster is, though, to me, it doesn't make sense to just blow everything up and rip everything down and strip it all down to pieces. You got to push the right buttons here, and I'm not saying it's easy. What scares me the most, though, with where they currently are when analyzing this franchise, nobody's on the same page. Front office members, Chuck Fletcher, and then they hired an outside agency to help hire John Tortorella. And this was all what Anthony Sanfilippo put into his Crossing Broad article, which was absolutely fantastic and dove into a lot of it. And this isn't different to other sports. The Philadelphia Eagles, the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot of teams that utilize these outside agencies to help out with a vision of fixing a franchise or keeping a franchise intact and making sure the mold internally is secure and strong. That's fine. I have nothing against it. But basically what it seems like is nobody believes in Chuck Fletcher, and Chuck Fletcher's voice isn't being heard very well, and this, that. It's like, well, if your GM is not really giving a lot of confidence within your franchise, it seems like he's pretty much knowing that his job is going to eventually be taken from him, and there's not as much strong communication and on the same page dialogue occurring, and that's definitely a recipe for disaster. Whether we look at Bobby Clark, whether we look at Homer, whether we look at Chuck Fletcher, whether we look at Dave Scott, you know, it's obvious that they wanted Barry Trotz first. That's fine, all right? If Barry Trotz is number one on your list and Tortorella is after that, that's not a bad list, and that makes a lot of sense, honestly. And they offered Barry Trotz, and he would have been the highest paid head coach in hockey, and he elected to look in another direction. I don't necessarily blame him. So they did offer him. But the GM doesn't like Tortorella, and maybe it's because he's going to have to deal with someone who's a harsher coach, who wants certain guys to play in his style. Now, that's overblown, though. All these old players, Dubinsky saying prayers out to the Flyers and all that, that's a joke. It honestly is embarrassing. All right, my best friend played for the Columbus Blue Jackets, still does, and played under John Tortorella. The dude loved him. He only had great things to say in the locker room. There might be one or two people here and there. Guess what? Bruce Cassidy leaves Boston. Now there's some rumors and speculation that there's some guys that don't really like Bruce Cassidy. It's the National Hockey League. It is a league that is basically formed around retreads and Laviolette getting a new job and Barry Trotz now going from Washington, D.C., and then now he's going to New York, and now he's getting fired from New York, and he's going elsewhere. You look through all these track records, Alain Vigneault, and now John Tortorella. This is how the league goes. Look what happened with the Calgary Flames this year when they went through a coaching change. This is the nature of the beast. So all of these coaches, you think out in Calgary, there's not guys that thought, oh, what the hell are we doing here with this type of personality? I mean, it's just how it is. Bruce Cassidy, I would have loved to go after him, but guess what? Maybe there's some guys in Boston that look side-eyed at Bruce Cassidy. In this league, 3 years, 4 years, once you have your message in these players, at some point, it runs dry. I mean, John Cooper with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's not act as if his job was always secure. Now think about talking about John Cooper in a way where it's like, hey, I don't know. It's like, no, this guy's phenomenal, right? Look at his team. Look at the way they're playing. But there was one point in Tampa where they were wondering if they were going to make a big-time change and there would be a firing underneath the resume of John Cooper in Tampa, and it just changes the narrative a bit. But now what you're seeing is, was there much to that firing? These firings happen all the damn time. It doesn't mean that he's a bad coach, and there's guys who don't like every coach in the National Hockey League, especially after a long period of time. And yeah, Tortorella does hold players accountable, and he does have a hard-working attitude style to him. That doesn't mean it's a failure in today's era. He has to find the line, though. And knowing how disappointing last season was and how bad the culture was, maybe it's not a horrendous thing. Here's where I'm at with the head coach, basically. Trotz moves the needle the most. Cassidy, the second most. And then there's a grouping of just guys. And good guys with track records. But this ain't moving in the right direction until the players kind of figure this puppy out and the GM helps out with better roster construction and better players. That's where it begins. All right, you bring in a retread NHL coach that has a ton of experience. Okay. When I watched last year, there's a lot more that we have to figure out than just that. And, of course, starting with the head coach, I mean, you saw Alain Vigneault and that whole debacle play out in such a negative light. And Mike Yeo, I mean, all right, the guy tried his best. He was put in a horrendous situation, but the team was the team. You got to start with the head coach and the personality, and all right. But there wasn't going to be a head coaching hire other than Trotz. And Cassidy's not even where Trotz is for me. But maybe Cassidy would make me feel better. There weren't too many head coaches where I'm fist pumping in joy and I'm super excited for this whole entire turnaround. Now I need to see what the moves are going to be. And what I'm hearing is maybe no Oscar Lindblom. Maybe he gets bought out. Maybe a JVR trade to try and move that contract alongside of a Claude Giroux pick that you got from Florida when you made the trade at the trade deadline last season. And then you open up some cap space to acquire a big-time free agent. We know the local product, Johnny Gaudreau, is a name that Chuck Fletcher is interested in. So if they go throw him the big bucks, the 7 years, it comes down to what Calgary is going to counter with, whatever other teams are going to put in his direction in front of his eyeballs, what they were counter with AAV-wise, and then, of course, they have the extra year. So they have that 8th year involved. Calgary is a team that seems to be on the uprise, and they're having a ton of fun, and they're making postseason runs, and they're way more structured than the Flyers are. But we know his local ties here to the East Coast, that there's something with that when it comes to maybe making a change to his career and looking at the way that he's going to be handled as a UFA. So only time will tell. I think they have a good shot if they make the money right, and knowing Chuck Fletcher's history, he's not afraid to slap a ton of cash down. He's not afraid to have that open checkbook that Dave Scott mentioned. Last year, what we saw wasn't the product that they envisioned. It just completely fell apart when all of those injuries happened, and it got so low that they couldn't get themselves out. They couldn't dig themselves out of what tragedy really happened. I'm not hearing good things about Ryan Ellis, though. And if you don't have Ryan Ellis, you're going to have some trouble. And this is why I get so bothered with Ivan Provorov, because we all scream that, he's not a number one defenseman. He's playing 25, 26 minutes a night. He's -3, turnovers galore. He's not seeing the ice very well. He's making horrendous passes, trying to thread the needle through the middle of the ice. It gets picked off. I mean, how many times were we sick watching Ivan Provorov just make horrendous mistakes nonstop and get beat wide, or he wasn't strong on his stick in front of the net and someone scored easily, or hell, someone's left wide open back door. Where I have the problem is, though, is when I do watch Ivan Provorov with a Ryan Ellis, or when I do watch Ivan Provorov with a Matt Niskanen. He's a damn good number two. He's a stud number two who plays comfortably, who doesn't have as much pressure on him. The pressure's off. So, okay, you want to say he's not good enough to be a number one, but if you're good enough to be a damn solid number two, as long as someone's alongside of you, that's still a very important piece to the puzzle. So that's where my emotions conflict with one another when studying Provorov. But what I'm hearing about Ryan Ellis, don't get your hopes up. And that's devastating. I always feel that the front office is an easy scapegoat answer when things look horrible with a team. Blow it up, get rid of it, all that stuff. And I still have a difficult time because Cam Atkinson is a dude that scores a lot of goals, and winning teams have a Cam Atkinson. Winning teams have a Joel Farabee. Sean Couturier is a very good two-way forward. He has a role on winning teams. There are players and there is substance within this roster that I value, it seems, more than most. They still have a lot of holes, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of things that work in winning teams and in winning organizations. You just have to push all the right buttons surrounding that, and there's a bunch of them that they have to do. I feel screaming at front offices is always what you do when you're upset. Get rid of Howie, get rid of Jeffrey Lurie. Now those same people love what's going on here with Howie Roseman's offseason. Get rid of Elton Brand, this and that. It's like always screaming at the front office. Always, always, always whenever you lose. So I normally try and shy away from that because I think it's too easy to look in that direction, too easy to go that route. Until it's glaringly obvious, though, that there's so much dysfunction happening. I don't trust Dave Scott. Whether Chuck Fletcher, and my meter on Chuck Fletcher is he's just a guy, okay? He's not good. He's not the worst GM ever in the history of hockey. And to be fair, I don't even know how much leverage he has right now or how much freedom he has at this point to make certain decisions. And maybe it's because of previous decisions that they're not excited about, or even going back to the Minnesota Wild track record. But if that's the case, why is he even here to begin with? No matter if he's good, if he's bad, if he's average, if he's a little above average, a little below average, the look of Chuck Fletcher, the feel of Chuck Fletcher, the energy of Chuck Fletcher, and the era of Flyers hockey underneath his regime is so terrible, and it smells so awful that I think you got to look elsewhere. But then it goes back to Bobby Clark, Homer, all these people up top, Dave Scott. It is brutal upstairs. And I normally, while it's very, 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 very important to have that structure up top, and I'm not downplaying that, sometimes it's too easy of a yell for me. It's time. It's time to recognize that it's a disaster. So, it's just disappointing because, okay, they get a head coach. I don't think John Tortorella is a bad coach. I think he's a fine coach. I think he's an experienced coach. He's a coach who's going to bring some attitude. And I do believe that now he's been off again after the Columbus firing, that maybe there's a learning curve involved, and now he understands where he has to fine-tune his style based off of what athletes are like in 2022. Now, maybe he doesn't, and that it ends up being an even shorter career here in Philadelphia than we'd imagine, and he sticks to his guns. But, I'm sure that there's a fine line of tweaking, just understanding that, look, maybe it worked in 2004. Maybe it worked during the era of the Tampa Bay Lightning when I won a damn Stanley Cup. But it's not like those Blue Jackets teams. You look at those Blue Jackets teams, who, by the way, took down the Toronto Maple Leafs in that epic series where they swept them after Toronto had all that buzz. Based off of their skill level and what was on their team, if you go to the Blue Jackets season-by-season record, I mean, you can make the argument that, where were they at here? What is this, 2021? Well, the 2020-2021 season was a little bit of that was 56 games. They were, 47-31, 45-30, 50-24, 50-24 in 2016-2017. 45-30, 47-31. There were some damn good seasons out of a Columbus Blue Jackets team. Now, you talk about first-round exits, this and that. I always feel that's overblown when it comes to coaches. Well, one guy, DeBoer, right? Everyone's like, oh, DeBoer, this and that. And I mean, when you get to the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, playoffs, especially with how the format is now, if you're the Penguins playing the Capitals and you're playing the second seeds playing the third seed in the Metropolitan, it's not like it's 1 versus 8, where you're the 1 seed and you're playing the 8th seed anymore. You're seeing a matchup that could possibly be an Eastern Conference Finals matchup in a different format. So if you lose in the first round, it doesn't necessarily mean that coach stinks or that coach is bad or that coach can't get over the hump. If the way the format is now you're playing teams that are just as unbelievable as you in round 1, where in years past, if you were a 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, you're playing an 8 seed, a 7 seed, and a 6 seed. And by the way, it's hockey. You make the playoffs as an 8th seed. Okay, say that to the Kings. So I look at it completely different from that angle of, well, they only got to this round and that round. Once you get to the playoffs, and you're in these dogfights, you could have a team, the same team. Let's say, and I'm making up a random year, 2018's the season. You have a group of 20 men that go to war with you. You love them. They play a great system. They got good goal scorers, and they got good defense with a nice netminder, right? That's your key components, which is a damn nice crew to have. Let's say in 2018, you were good enough to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Same exact team the next year, same style too. And you go to the second round. I mean, it's just, you could have the same team one year go farther, the same team the next year, and it's a different season. It doesn't make me think any less of the coach behind the bench, unless it's glaringly obvious that this guy did something so moronic, like scratch 3 of his best players or change the lines that were working to put horrible players, and Michael Raffle is playing second line minutes. Unless we're talking about just one of the most egregious decision makings we've ever seen, then, okay, I'm more up to it. I think it gets a little too harsh. But all around, that's kind of where I'm at here with this Philadelphia Flyers team. It's a fine hiring. It's a nice hiring. I don't have any issues with the hiring. I don't have outrage. I already see this guy stinks. He's too old school, this and that. What are you basing this off of, right? I mean, look at the current state of the franchise. You got a guy who has a track record of winning a Stanley Cup, being nominated for Coach of the Year a handful of times. Why? Because a couple people publicly will bash him? Every single coach gets bashed by a handful of players in that locker room. You know how many will stand up for John Tortorella? 95% of his players. There's a lot of guys that love him, and a lot of guys that admire playing for him, and a lot of guys that love that passion and attitude. Does it run At a time at some point? Absolutely. 3 years, 4 years. Welcome to Peter Laviolette's life. Welcome to Ken Hitchcock, who ends up going to different organizations. This is just the way the league works. Retreads. And when you tried to go outside the box and get younger, go the college route, you know what you end up with? Dave Hackstall. So right now, if this is the path they choose, which it's obvious they do, then I can live with that. Then that's fine with me. Because you could do a lot worse. It's almost a safe hire. And I hate to put it that way, but I almost label this a safe hire. It could technically backfire, but it seems to be just an easy way to go. And I don't know if that's a bad thing with how awful last season was. Unwatchable. You forgot about them. When guys like me for the last 15, 20 games of the season go, I can't even throw it on, you got a problem. Because even when they stunk, and they stunk, it's on. Background noise, doing laundry, folding the clothes, kicking back, doing things on my iPad, looking around, whatever it is, shopping online. But the games were on the TV. When you evaporate from existence, in my eyes, let's go, Dave Scott. Figure it the hell out. Now, we did see that they were, and this was also on the Crossing Broad article from Anthony Sanfilippo, when you look at DeBrincat, apparently they were doing some due diligence on DeBrincat, for whatever that's worth, over in Chicago to try and get some players. Can they land Johnny Gaudreau? Can they land a big fish this year? Can they bring in a big-time name that can help with the intrigue? And then you get a top six of something along the lines of Gaudreau, Couturier, Atkinson. Well, you know Gaudreau would want to play with a Kevin Hayes, right, because of their Boston college days. So can he get a Gaudreau, Hayes, Atkinson, a Boston college line? Joel Farabee, Couturier, Travis Konechny. There's a top six for you. What does that mean with defense? Because you know their defensive holes, problematic. You got to shore up that D zone. You got to shore up 5-on-5 play where you can actually move the puck in transition, get up ice, create some scoring chances. How about a power play that can actually work around the puck? All right? Work the puck around. Get some good puck movements. Move the goalie side to side. Maybe work an overload. Get behind that goal line. Work the puck around, a little tic-tac-toe. I'm watching these power plays, Colorado, like what? The New York Rangers power play. Now, they stunk 5-on-5, but when they got some power play opportunities, the puck's moving around. Zibanejad, Fox. Oh, that's right. That's what a man advantage is supposed to look like. We don't get that. So, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because I don't see a good vision right now. I don't. I see multiple different people that see it in totally different ways, and they're trying to Band-Aid it together. If they get right players somehow. See, you can have a bad philosophy. Now, the percentage isn't going to be very high, but you could have a bad philosophy where the result is what you wanted. And I'm not saying for a long period of time, but for Band-Aid purposes, you could have a bad way of going about things, but still lucking your way into success. For example, if you do make those moves I mentioned with Lindblom and JVR, and you bring in a Johnny Gaudreau, and then there's some appeal to what's going on, and there's a new buzz involved, and they start off the season with a hot streak where they win 8 games, 7 games, they're 8-2 in their first 10, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Even though Bobby Clark and Chuck Fletcher puts a save the face type of attitude on where he's just lying publicly and he despises everything behind closed doors, and the GM's voice isn't even really being heard as much as it should. Well, then that means you don't have the right guy in place. But if that does happen, and it's like, okay, well, the way they went about it was actually putrid, but the result panned out. It's not a high percentage that occurs, but maybe that happens. It just smells like a total disaster. So it's hard to get up about it, which stinks. All right, 856-442-9805. I'll open up the phone line so I can hear from you all out there. We do have a new partner here, and it's one that we've been wanting for a long time, Freestone Farm CBD. It's my favorite CBD brand because they farm it themselves with all organic inputs, and they offer the highest quality genetics in their strains and extracts. I personally like using it before working out and after working out before I go to bed. I personally have such a better sleeping experience at night. Check out their tropical tasting Bayox that clocks in at 24.1% CBD. On top of that, use promo code BROADS for 20% off at checkout at FreestoneFarmCBD.com. 856-442-9805. That's the phone number to hop on board. I would love to hear your thoughts on John Tortorella. I don't know what direction this is going to go. I see it kind of 50-50. To be fair, I do see some fans that do like the move, and it's a lot of old school guys. For example, my dad's your typical old school 90s Flyers guy, and 70s really. I don't know why I use the 90s. That's because that's when I was born, and that's what I related to the varsity jackets and all. And sometimes to an annoying degree where he's like, oh, back in my day, right? And this guy, John Tortorella, is the back in my day style coach. So he's like, oh, I love him. I wanted him more than Trotz. And I'm like, why? Well, because he doesn't take any, you know what, and he's always firing. It's like, yeah, see, you're the clown. You're the fool. You're the people that, honestly, I despise when it comes to hockey fans because you're stuck in your own way. You wanted Tortorella over Torts? Come on, Dad. I even said that to him, too. Like, you're absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is what I can't stand about old school Flyers people, and this is why we're at. This is why we're at where we're at. You right there. You are the reason why this franchise will never be able to get out of that old school mentality. And until we don't, we're going to be stuck with nonsense. Nonsense. So he likes it for the wrong reasons. There's fans that like it for the right reasons. And then there's a bunch of blah out there too. All right, we'll go to Jimmy to fire things off. How you doing this morning, Jimmy?
Good, man. I have so many conflicting feelings about this. On one hand, Tortorella is a coach that's had a lot of success in this league. On the other hand, for 4 different teams, it's obvious that his shtick got old really fast, and his demanding, in-your-face style wore on the team, the players, the media, the fans, everyone.
Yeah, but doesn't that happen with every coach? If you look through every coach in the NHL, all these successful coaches, Laviolette and this and that, it's just really the nature of how a hockey coach works in this league. It's all retreads. It's all 3, 4, 5 years. They get sick and tired of it. They move to the next city. They try it in a new city. Let's go hope for a cup and bring in a fiery guy. It really isn't just the Flyers kind of repurposing Torts here.
I think a lot of coaches get fired just because their team had down years. And then, Torts is more like the Mike Keenan role where, like, he's so over the top that, yeah, he's a fiery guy that you can bring to a team that's, like, ready to compete. I'm not sure if that same sort of fiery mentality is good for a team that's pretty much in either a retool or a rebuild. But, hey, he's had success. I'm sure all the old school Flyers fans are going to love how much he pretty much hates his players. It seems like.
No, he doesn't hate. That's the false narrative. My best friend literally played for Torts for the last couple of years. He doesn't hate his players. He doesn't hate his players at all. That's the silly narrative that's crossing the line. There's a lot of players that absolutely love him. He despises laziness. He doesn't enjoy someone like Patrick Laine, who is a goal scorer, and that's where I talk about the fine line. There's going to be players in the NHL like a Patrick Laine who can score 40 goals, who can rip the puck. He's got a phenomenal wicked shot that can snipe netminders, right? But he ain't going in the corners and giving you 200%. And if you want to take it to an extreme, which Torts tends to do, well, that's where it might backfire. But that's one guy out of 28 guys or so. When you talk about healthy scratches and up and down AHL players and things of that nature, he does not hate his guys. And even the ones that have been vocal about him, Barnaby, for example, someone on Twitter who was vocal about the hiring, he even said, off the ice, great guy. And I'm paraphrasing, but off the ice, phenomenal. It just comes down to the hockey side of things is where it seemed like they did not come together and agree on the way he handled certain situations. So, no, he doesn't hate his players at all. It's actually the complete opposite. Look at Cam Atkinson's excitement for Torts to come in. I spoke to someone else in the league yesterday, and I'll tell you exactly, if I know where my phone is, I'll give you verbatim the words that I got out of what they thought about Tortorella to Philadelphia. Quote, I've heard he's actually a sick coach. I've heard he's actually a sick coach. Here's another guy in the NHL, and this one's a little bit more of a bigger presence, if you will. And no, it's not who you're thinking. But yeah, I mean, it's public perception different than reality here. But there's truth to it, to that side of things. We can't be pushing it overboard. We'll go to our next call here. Welcome on in, man. You're on Broads Media.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. What's happening, man?
Not much, man. Just chilling. Look, when it comes to Torts, do I think he's a good coach? Yeah, I do. Do I think he can maybe bring the best out of his players? Yeah, I do. Do I think he can maybe bring this roster to the playoffs, like coach them up to the playoffs? Yeah, I do. Can we win a playoff series with the right matchup? Yeah, I sure do believe that. But do I think we're going to be any closer to winning a cup 3 years from now with Torts as our coach? No, I don't. I think this is just a short-term hire, and I think that we are better off in the long run just by embracing a 3 to 5 year rebuild around the right guys.
It's impossible it's impossible to sell that right now, though. If you're the Flyers organization going after this season, right, and following this past year, hey, everyone, we're going to stink for 3 to 5 more. Just bear with us. How could you possibly look everybody in the face and say it? Even though I do agree with what you're saying, this seems like a Band-Aid. But, and this is something that I mentioned earlier in the show, that I was texting one of my old teammates who lives out in Michigan, and what I brought up is, in this league, like, you might look at it as, well, can they make the playoffs? Maybe. Can they win around? Maybe. The Rangers just went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 6 games. The Flyers a couple years ago were 1 game away from the Eastern Conference Finals. You get in, and I don't mock that and devalue that as if it's just nothing. If you talk about, can Torts get you to the play? If Torts gets this team to the playoffs, and this team is in there, anything can happen. This isn't where, and I know ironically this year it is Colorado and it is the Tampa Bay Lightning, but it was the Montreal Canadiens. And the Colorado has failed and failed and failed and failed to get here. Now, to be fair, they are built for more sustained success. But my point is, I won't just mock the fact that we're getting into in this hypothetical of yours, we're getting into the postseason, because who knows what that can turn into. The St. Louis Blues sucked the whole year, and then they go win a damn Stanley Cup. So, I mean, I think that that's still just as important as any sort of sustained success, because in hockey, you just never know.
Mm-hmm. You're not wrong on that, but I don't know, man. We'll just see how it plays out, but it's hard for me to feel optimistic about the state of the franchise right now.
That I agree with. No doubt. No doubt. You bring in a new coach, you're not happy you're in that spot because that means you had to fire your previous regime and all. But there should be more of a better feel. There's so much happening, and there's so much crap behind the scenes that stings so much that you have a lot more to do than just bring in a John Tortorella for you to feel like this thing's on the right track. And it might be a bad example because we've seen what went down since the hiring. But I just want to use this as an example of when it could go the way where things feel good. When Brett Brown was let go, and you had Joel Embiid, at the time you had Ben Simmons, and you had Tobias Harris, you thought, okay, a coaching change can mean the world. So you bring in Doc Rivers. Do you see the difference in the city feel with that compared to this. Laughable right now because who knows? Maybe we're going to love Torts in 4 years and we're already kicking Doc Rivers out the city and we want nothing to do with his face anymore. So maybe with time, this becomes a horrendous example. But I'm just trying to show you the difference in what a coaching change can feel like based off of when you at least can understand a direction of one franchise, feel good about a certain superstar in Joel Embiid, hoping and praying that one blossoms into a player that can at least shoot a damn basketball, but he's so unwilling that it's unexplainable. And then this. More offseason moves will tell us more about where we're going to be when the season begins. When it comes to the free agency, can they land a big fish? And what is Ryan Ellis going to be? Because if he's a nobody, if he's not playing, no surgery, figuring out timelines, this and that, if we see another year, and it doesn't mean I hate the trade, by the way, because Nolan Patrick blows. What you gave up, Phil Myers, who ended up being a healthy scratch and this and that. Look, these guys are irrelevant. It was worth the shot. It was worth the risk. So from a trade level, I got no problems with what they tried to acquire with what they gave up because they gave up stuff that were useless. For this core as a defensive crew, though, if things are without Ryan Ellis, the defensive zone might look very similar to last season. I want to thank everybody so much for hanging out. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning into the show. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button as well. I greatly appreciate it. If you're going to an event, Phillies games, or anything else out there, you can utilize the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page for $20 off of your purchase. It's a no-brainer. Get yourself to a game today. And then lastly, Broads Media on TikTok, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Hit the follow button there. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out, and